I think I know how Himiko survived the weathering curse. Well, sort of. Remember Evanescence's comment about awakening her true self? How she had only been awakened 3 times in the past 1,000 years? How 2 of those times were because of the Nameless? Yeah, I think one of those 2 Nameless was Himiko. The other one was her ancestor Graphia. It was these encounters that first cursed Graphia's entire bloodline and eventually cured Himiko. Yep, you heard me right. Graphia was a Nameless. She arrived in plain Arcadia 10 Ember eras ago when the Express crash-landed on a planet. She and 107 other Nameless came to fight the Antimatter Legion in Benzai Tengoku, and she eventually saved the world by concealing it in canvas along with the Express. This is the conclusion I arrived at after collecting all the little hints scattered in plain Arcadia's readables, and the glue that sticks all of these pieces together is this one word: Murata. The word that those familiar with Honkai Impact's Himiko know to be Himiko's last name. The word that was mysteriously written in the navigation log of the Express. The word that has become a legacy taught through generations in the Graphia family. The word that I think means Astral Express. So buckle up, because this is gonna be one long train ride back to the beginning, to the origin of Himiko and her interwoven fate with the Trailblaze. Now, before I walk you through several hops of tinfoil hat scenarios, there is one important question that we need to answer. When did the Express crash land in plain Arcadia? By answering this, Graphia's identity as a Nameless would reveal itself. So let's establish the timeline. According to the databank, the Astral Express crashed on the shores of Ahatopia, then entered the painting along with the world. This implies that the crash happened before Benzai Tengoku was concealed in canvas by Graphia. It crashed on the planet first and then it entered the painting. Those are 2 separate events. Now, Graphia concealed the world in canvas in 2149 AE, 1 Ember era after the arrival of the Antimatter Legion, which effectively ended the destruction of Benzai Tengoku. This puts the timeline of the Express's crash around 2148 to 2149 AE. For context, it is now 2158 AE. This timeline aligns with Gallagher's comment about Mikhail never being able to contact the Express since he stayed in Penacony.
That old man always had this strange belief in the Nameless and the Trailblaze, and I never understood where he got that confidence from. Especially since he never managed to get in touch with the Express while he was alive.
The attempts made by Mikhail were in hopes for the Nameless to back him up now that he was all by himself. Brasilina had gone deep into the memory zone and Ternan had left to fight off the swarm. While Gallagher didn't mention the exact year here, we know that Ternan eventually joined the group of Galaxy Rangers who killed Zulu. The assassination of Zulu happened in 2148 AE, meaning Mikhail was unable to contact the Express because it had crash-landed in Benzai Tengoku and gone out of commission in 2148 AE. To be more precise, the Express fell in the era of demonic apocalypse. This was the time of war against the Antimatter Legion. There were eyewitnesses who claimed to see a giant dragon falling from beyond the sky. This was the Express. Now that we know when the Express crash-landed in Benzai Tengoku, you might be wondering how this tells us that Graphia was a Nameless. Here is where I present you with another readable called Murata Cultural Study. This readable talks about the origin of Murata, from the origin of the word to how Graphia adopted it as the name of her clan until it was interpreted as the will to defend the weak passed down through generations. However, before it became a concept, Murata was an actual physical thing. Legend has it, Graphia descended into the world from within the Murata. Then, after they won against the Antimatter Legion, she entrusted her children with the protection of the world and the recovery of the Murata, which had sunk into the depth of the world. This tells us 3 things. 1. Graphia was not native to plain Arcadia because she descended into the world, perhaps from beyond the sky. 2. Murata is some sort of vehicle. Graphia traveled and arrived in Benzai Tengoku with it, and that was why she emerged out of it upon arrival. 3. After her arrival, Murata was either lost or broken or both. So she asked her kids to recover and or repair it. And haven't we just talked about a vehicle that crash-landed on the planet? Now, if you would divert your attention to this other readable, a letter addressed to Trailblazer, you will find the proof of the Express's arrival alongside the Nameless. Not simply an empty divine train with no passenger that crashed on the planet, but one that carried 108 Nameless in it. The writer of this letter said that in the era of the Antimatter Legion attack, there was a black divine rabbit that descended from the star rail alongside 108 nameless. They descended from the sky to help fight the destruction. The mission item we obtain alongside this readable suggests that the divine rabbit is none other than Pom Pom. Those 108 nameless, Graphia was one of them. The claim that Graphia was not a Benzai Tengoku native is also supported by the belief that Plain Arcadia was founded by visitors from beyond the sky. Graphia family was later known to be one of the founders of the world, so it is safe to assume that she was one of those visitors. Also, remember the imaginary train that we first met in Plain Arcadia? The Bulletworm Express? Those who got deep into the lore of this imaginary, I suppose people like me, but in Plain Arcadia, claim that the train shares the same lineage as the Astral Express. The resemblance is no coincidence, but rather a result of the train being traced from the Astral Express. I imagine this to be the work of Graphia. She might have tried to find the Express that had been lost to the world, and in her attempt, she drew what the Express looked like. And that was how the Bulletworm Express came to be. A worm, in European folklore, is a snake-like dragon. Remember how the people described the Express earlier? A giant dragon falling from beyond the sky. The word Mura that March found in the navigation log, March didn't even question if it could be Himeko who wrote it because surely she knows what Himeko's handwriting looks like. She believed it to be somebody whom Himeko knew, and March was right about it. It was not written by Himeko, it was written by Graphia. The fact that March found it in the navigation log of all places implies that Graphia was also a navigator of the Express. So, Graphia was a nameless, most likely a navigator of the Express before it crash-landed in Benzai Tengoku in 2148 AE. After the crash and the concealment of the world in canvas, the Express was lost to the world and nobody was able to find it. To make matters worse, instead of asking her kids to search for a train, Graphia asked them to recover the Murata. And this is where the confusion stems from. Before we continue, if you're planning to get Evanesia now that her banner is up, EnjoyGM might help you there. EnjoyGM is a safe and simple way to save money on your in-game top-ups. All you need to make a purchase is your UID and game server, and your top-up will arrive in no time. No account login or password required. EnjoyGM offers exclusive coupons on your first purchase. Better still, you'll unlock exclusive member prices after your first purchases. The $100 pack will only cost you $84. EnjoyGM is PCIe DSS certified, and you only need to look at the reviews to see how safe and reliable it is. So, if you're a spending player and wish to bring Evanesia home, use my link in the description and start saving big on EnjoyGM today.
From that tower of infinity descended the world painter to walk the mortal realm. With a single stroke of her brush, she brought forth 1,000 imaginae, turning the tide against destruction. To go where there are cries, to go where there are flames. That is the meaning of Murata.
This is part of the bedtime story Ryusuke used to tell Himeko, which is part of the teaching of Murata that has been passed down in the Graphia family. And I've been wondering about it since, because if you replace the infinite tower with the imaginary tree, that's basically the story of Aha's ascension to Eonhood. The difference is that Aha witnessed the nothingness of everything, and when they heard the sound of a baby's cry, they burst out laughing, thus ascending to Eonhood. Now, that aside, I've also been wondering where this infinite tower comes from. Recently, I learned that the word Murata literally means countless or infinite tower. So when the legend says that Graphia emerged from the Murata, the listeners take it as Graphia emerging from an infinite tower. And this was what the people had been looking for. They examined records from the IPC and memo keepers and found nothing. There was no evidence of the existence of an infinite tower in Plain Arcadia. A professor suggested that this tower might be a massive space fissure instead, considering that there was an infinite space within it and that Graphia emerged from it. And yet, even after the IPC finished the reconstruction of Plain Arcadia, no space fissure was found. Some then resorted to believe that this was simply an artistic embellishment of Graphia's feat during the battle against the destruction, but I beg to disagree. Maybe they weren't able to find it because they had been looking for the wrong thing, or they had been looking for a moving object. As I've proposed earlier, Murata that Graphia was referring to is the Express. And I know that it is a train, obviously, It looks nothing like a tower, right? Well, maybe, but only because we've been looking at it when it's on the star wheel. However, if it happens to be flipped 90 degrees, say when it fell and crash landed in Ahatopia, wouldn't it look like a tower? An infinite tower at that, because Eon knows how many cars there are in the Express. I mean, the passenger car that we have access to can only hold bedrooms for 4 people. Danheng, March, Weld, and Himeko. 10 Ember eras ago, there were at least 108 of the Nameless. Imagine how many cars there are that it could hold 108 separate bedrooms. So when the legend says that there is an infinite space inside it, it could also mean countless space, referring to the many cars of the Express. So, Graphia's children, their children after them, and adventurers were all looking for the wrong thing. It was not a tower, it was a train. Trickier still, this train had been moving around Planarcadia. So now we've come to the part where Himeko allegedly contradicted herself about when the Express fell on Planarcadia. Allegedly, because I don't think it's true, nor do I think there would be a retcon. There are 2 versions of when the Express fell, according to Himeko. In her character story 1 and that one-time dialogue you got after defeating Kokolia, she said she saw the Express fell with her own eyes. In her regular dialogue at the Express, she said it fell long before she was born. So, which is it? As we've established earlier, we know that the Express's crash happened 10 Ember eras ago, so long before she was born would be the correct one. Then what was this event that she witnessed with her own eyes? She saw the Express door open the night sky and crashed. If it was something that would be retcon, I don't think the writers would put it in her character story. I think this is proof that the Express, after the crash, had been traversing the sky of Planarcadia with what little remains of its power. I mean, think about it. The Express crash-landed in Planarcadia and then entered the canvas with the world, right? But why was there no mention of anyone discovering it afterwards? There are records of people claiming they witnessed a giant dragon falling from beyond the sky, and many artworks from that time featuring a long line stretching across the canvas said to be proof of the Express's visit, yet nobody ever found it. It's a thing out of this world, Himeko said when she found it. Surely, somebody of the previous eras would have made it known had they discovered it. So, the Express was not stationary after the fall, and it eventually came to Himeko because she was lost. It wished to guide her home, which is the impression I got from reading her encounter with the Express. The train showed her a myriad of magnificent worlds, enticing her with the promise of a journey beyond the stars. It asked her if she would like to travel with it. The Express felt almost sentient. And Himeko was lost prior to this encounter, and it was when the Express came to her that she could return home. This is a recurring theme on how each member of the Express eventually got on board. Weld, although he intentionally went to find Himeko, was stranded in Salsoto with Void Archives and was eventually rescued by the Express. Danheng was traveling aimlessly after his exile from the Shenzhou. His #1 goal was to escape his past. March was encased in ice, floating in the vacuum of space. And Trailblazer, well, we know their story already. So I think this is why Graphia's descendants were unable to find the Murata. Not only was it not a tower, but also it had been moving all over the place, and it eventually showed itself hundreds of years later to the last descendant of Graphia, making her the new navigator of the Astral Express. The moment Himeko agreed to travel with the Express together, she became a Nameless. Okay, now that we've got all of these details sorted out, it's time to go back to the beginning. How did Himeko survive the weathering curse? There are 3 theories about the cause of the weathering curse. First, it was the price Graphia had to pay in order to seal the world in canvas, which she obtained through the Phantasmoon Games. Second, it was a corrosion caused by the destruction that took root deep in her bloodline. Third, it was a hereditary condition. Graphia might have carried the genes that caused this condition. Personally, I prefer the third theory. See, these theories are based off of what the Graphia family know of Planarcadia, or rather, what the public know about it. And that is Planarcadia is a planet blessed by the elation that was once ravaged by the destruction. That's why the possibility of Graphia winning the Phantasmoon Games and using her victory to obtain the power is taken into consideration, hence the first theory. The same goes for the second theory because she did fight against the Antimatter Legion. The third theory, however, is a bit strange, to say the least. No mention of any path influence or anything, Graphia just so happened to carry the genes. Yet it is known that the elation cannot lift the curse. The way Ryusuke talks about it is as if another path is the root cause here, and Aha is powerless to meddle with that other path. And if we're talking about a path whose effect can be passed down through generations and is also present in Plain Arcadia, we have exactly one candidate, the Abundance. While Yaosha is known to bless mortal with immortality, in Evanesia's character story, it is mentioned that the Abundance can also drain life out of a living being, leaving one like a withered leaf, which is a similar description to the Weathering Curse.
Few descendants carrying the Graphia bloodline have lived past 30. Most of them wither like flowers while they're still young, skin cracking and peeling like dried paint.
Remember the deals that Trailblazer made with both Evanesia? Once was when they needed help to fight Sparksea, and another when they asked Evanesia to give them 3 minutes to defeat Fullwish. Both of these deals would cost Trailblazer something if they failed: enslaved for all eternity by Sparksea and the death of 200,000 civilians. And we know that Evanesia's true self has only been summoned when a supplicant has severely violated the games. For the past 1,000 years, only 3 times have this happened, 2 of which she met a Nameless. Considering what I've just told you about Graphia's identity and Himeko's origin, I believe this Nameless to be the 2 of them. Besides, Evanesia has shown in 2 separate occasions that she knows both Graphia and Himeko. In Graphia's case, this violation of the games came in the form of Asat Pramat. It is said that it took all 8 supplicants just to face him, suggesting that he did arrive when the Phantasmoon Games took place. Evanesia might have exercised her role as the arbitrator here because the Legion's attack could risk the Phantasmoon Games ending. And judging by how easily she could decide that the 200,000 people infected by Shu's flesh should die, I imagine she would have done something similar back then as long as it could stop the Antimatter Legion. Being a Nameless whose goal is to save the world they trailblaze on, Graphia must have struck a deal with Evanesia to not do that. Just like Trailblazer asking for 3 minutes to set things right their way, Graphia swore to use her brush to preserve everything claimed by the destruction, and perhaps also ask Evanesia to lend her a little nudge to achieve this. Evanesia, who saw her determination just as she did Trailblazer's, agreed to it. But it would come with a price, the life of Graphia and those of her descendants. In return, Evanesia promised to continue maintaining the course of the Phantasmoon Games for all eternity. In Himeko's case, it was the Herald of Death manslaughter. See, there are a lot of strange things about the Bloodstained Games. First of all, we know that many supplicants died trying to subdue the Herald of Death. So many of them died that people didn't know who ended up winning, believing that nobody did. Then again, Himeko said she defeated the Herald of Death. And if so, why wasn't that enough to make her the winner? Why is the fact that she defeated the Herald of Death not a more common knowledge? For example, when Fullwish antagonized the crew, why didn't anybody come forward to point out that they believe the crew did nothing wrong because their leader, the Navigator of the Express, was the one who defeated the previous Herald of Death? On the flip side, if Himeko did win, she sure acts like she didn't. Every time she talks about the winners of past Phantasmoon Games, she talks as if she wasn't one herself. Stranger still, she doesn't remember Evanesia. I mean, surely nobody is buying Evanesia's excuse of knowing Himeko from seeing her on the news, right? It must have been from the last Phantasmoon Games. But what exactly happened? Well, I don't know. What I know is that if Evanesia could place the curse in the first place, surely she can take it away. And if Graphia had to pay a price for the deal with Evanesia, perhaps the price that Himeko paid was a life away from her homeworld. Himeko's character story implies that Himeko's life is forever bound to the Express. She knows she would have to eventually bid goodbye to every passenger once they reach their destination, having accepted that her trailblazing journey is a lonely one. Everyone has their own destination, but Himeko's is to bring Akivily's train back to Pegana. It's almost as if she was never meant to return home. Perhaps that was why Himeko left behind a tombstone before embarking on her journey. She knew she wouldn't be coming back. Yet, here she is once again, having to face the skeleton in her closet and the ancestor she once bid goodbye to. What, have I not mentioned that Himeko had met Graphia in the past? Yeah, I think they had. if you've read Himeko's character story, you have probably asked this question. Who is that redacted person Himeko was talking to? I think that is Graphia. See, this conversation started out with Himeko commenting on what she had gone through. It had been a long journey, she said. The redacted person then replied that they had been waiting for so long, which implies that Himeko had met this person before, perhaps promised to return someday, and that was why the redacted person had been waiting. Then Himeko said that her experience was nothing compared to what the other person had gone through, but the other person said that they had never experienced the things that Himeko had. So the two of them are likely two people in the same line of work. You know, two people doing the same thing but doing it differently enough that the experiences are unique to each of them. Towards the end of the story, Himeko said she needed to go back because they were waiting for her, and there was a mention of her suitcase, the same one she has been carrying around since she became a navigator, and the mention of the Express. The people waiting for her could be the Express crew. So at this point of the story, Himeko was already the navigator of the Express. She was talking about her trailblazing experience, which means the other person was also a navigator. They had traveled different routes and experienced different things. Yet there was Himeko once again. The stars have finished their journey, she said. She was back home. And which other past navigator of the Express could have been waiting home for Himeko, if not Graphia? We know from Evanesia that Graphia is somehow still alive within the world in Canvas. That must be where she's been waiting for Himeko. And because this is the first time Himeko has been back home in 15 years, I believe this conversation has yet to happen. Perhaps when everything is over, when the Asset Pramat's crisis is taken care of, we will see this conversation takes place. I cannot wait for 4.3 because we will meet Graphia there, and I think finally learn something more about Himeko's past. She has been very mysterious about it, and it will be nice to finally see it come to light. Also, are you guys interested in lore recap videos? I tried doing this in the past but had never really committed to doing it. So yeah, do let me know if that is something you're interested in, and I'll make one starting this version. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.